Hello, my astrology friends. This is Lada from AstroladaOfficial. And today I have the incredible teacher, astrologer Viktor, who will speak about a very beloved topic, relationships. Hello, Viktor.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, we are going to be talking about love today. We're going to be looking at the 5th, 7th, and the 8th house, the different phases of love. Yeah,
Because many
it's a
people
nice
are
topic.
confused. Where do I look for relationships? Why is the fifth house, the seventh, and why the eighth house as well? So that would be great to make this distinction and how it feels different to be in relationships from a different house. And before I start, I want to say that Viktor is starting two courses, one in January, one in February. One is everything about the houses, so it can be for anyone, for advanced or beginners, because you look through all the houses. It's going to be 12 weeks, you said?
Right? We're going to be looking at how the houses connect to each other. So, for example, often what happens is that we just look at let's say the 10th house when we have got a transit there. But ideally speaking, if we did not learn while something was transiting the 9th house, the 10th house is going to cause problems there either way. So the 9th house is learning to achieve a higher status, which is the following house. But when we look at, for instance, the conversed houses, because the planet's actually rising from the rising sign towards the 12, 11, and so forth. So then the 11th house is we need a long-term goal so that we can achieve and manifest something, crystallize it, because the 10th house is a Capricornian house, so solidifying something. But it's not just the connection between those two, but also, for instance, how the fire houses connect to each other because they build on them. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit today anyway, because the 5th house really connects to the 9th when it comes to relationships. So it will be worth checking out how they connect.
Sorry.
And the other course is going to be about the 7 visible planets in each sign. That's going to be a little bit, a lot in depth, actually. We're going to be looking at from biological, philosophical, psychological point of view, sociability point of view. So that's very suitable for anyone who just starting their astrology journey, but also for advanced students who needs a little bit more organization in their studies and they want to understand each planet in each sign a little bit more. So most likely we will be able to cover probably one planet in 4 signs each week, maximum five signs, and each class will be approximately about 3 hours. So one planet, almost 1 hour in one sign,
And
shortly.
you cover planets in all signs, and that's quite a few weeks. That's so these are two courses. They'll run parallel, Saturdays and Sundays, almost parallel. One starts a bit later in February. If anyone is interested, I'll put links below to study with Viktor. So he's also one of my teachers. I've learned so much from him. But now let's start the topic that we have.
Let's start talking about love. One of the reasons why actually I chose this topic is because often there is a little bit of a debate about where to look at sex in the natal chart. And traditional astrology approaches it from the 5th house point of view, and modern astrology approaches that from the 8th house point of view. So we're going to have to kind of, look at why certain things are explained in a different way in the traditional astrology than in the modern astrology. And of course, all these houses are somehow connected to love. So in order for us to understand, how the whole horoscope works, it's good to look at the maturation process of the houses. So the first house is always, imagine it, that's the planetary joy of Mercury. So that's the infant. The second house is going to be the toddler. The third house is going to be the early childhood, the early environment, the one which we kind of, grow up and we are surrounded by. Then the fourth house is the later childhood. The fifth house is the teenager age. Then the sixth house is the early adulthood. And the seventh house is when we start getting more serious with our relationships. And then we get into a relationship, we, for example, get married. The ninth house is going to be something to do with higher learning and, you know, the desire to reach some heights in our professional world. And then 10th house is the crystallization of our higher learning, so we can achieve something. The 11th house is the old age and the retirement. And then last but not least, the 12th house, which is going to be something to do with death and incarnation, and to a certain extent, rebirth as well. So this is how the houses kind of like can be broken into. Now, we can do the same exactly with the signs as well. So the first 2 years of our life is Aries. Then the next 3 years is going to be Taurus. The next 4 years is going to be Gemini. The next 5 years is going to be Cancer. We always add 1 extra year to it. And then we get to the age of 84, which is interestingly enough, a Uranus return. So that's where the sign somehow stops with that maturation process. And of course, we're going to start again from Aries onwards if someone lives longer than 84. Now, why I just wanted to talk about that a little bit is to make a distinction here between the 5th and the 7th house. Because if we start thinking about that the 5th house represents our teenager era, then if we think about what is going on in our love life when we are teenagers, which is, by the way, a fire house, it's a Leo expression. So we are extremely passionate. We fall in love with others. We can call the 5th house as the puppy love. And of course, that's when we experience most likely our first sexual intercourse. Now, often what happens is that in modern astrology, we look at the 8th house as the house of sex, which I don't necessarily agree with. By the way, the 8th house came into the picture after Freud's psychological kind of thesis, and then he connected that with the 8th house. And I kind of understand that because the 8th house is something to do with trust. And obviously, you know, as the saying goes, that you only get to know your partner once you live together with them. So back in the days, people got married first and then they moved together. So obviously the trust was built way after. But I kind of look at the 8th house from a sexuality point of view as in a deeper connection between two souls. As in the house of penetration. And as we know, you know, when we start thinking about sex, Taurus is something to do with pleasure and Scorpio is about pain. Now, plenty of people are making faces while they are having sexual intercourse, or plenty of people are clinching and, you know, holding the other person's back or arms very tight. Because what Scorpio is about, the 8th house, is releasing some pain through sexual intercourse. And that's what we exactly do through sex, right? Loads of pleasure, but at the same time, it's about allowing someone to penetrate into our soul and seeing our deepest, you know, fears and stuff like that. And then we release that. From a hormonal point of view, obviously, we release loads of happiness hormones. So that's how the Taurus and the Scorpio, the 2nd and the 8th house, also can be connected to sex.
So you're saying that the 8th house, being a bit of a healer, shamanic house, is where you can have sexual healing if you are in the right relationship.
That's right, absolutely. So that deeper bond. The 5th house is the puppy love, you know, the one night stands, what we have, especially at an earlier stage of our life. But also, you know, 5th house is a Leo house, and Leo is about self-expression. Now, if we look at the fire houses, which I tend to call as the recreation houses, Then the ninth house is the God. The God gives life to Jesus, which is the first house. That's us. So the planetary joy of the ninth house is the sun. The planetary joy of the first house is Mercury. So basically, the king or the God gives life to a human being, whether they don't want to be bored or, whatever reason. And then what happens is that we give life to our offspring as well. And that's the fifth house. So that's why the first, the fifth, and the ninth are so much about recreation, creation of something, obviously in different forms. Fifth house is a fixed house, so it's a tangible thing. The ninth house is a mutable house, so we give birth to ideas there. And we have got our dreams, which we want to, somehow manifest, and we are very hopeful about, and so forth. The first house, how it plays its role here is the fact that everything starts with us. So if we don't do anything, there is no action. It's a cardinal house. If we don't take action on our dreams, or we don't utilize our assets, then unfortunately nothing is going to come to fruition from it. Now, if we look at the Western side of the natal chart, which is the 4th till the 9th house, then basically every single house is going to talk about relationship there. So firstly, the primary house of relationship is the 7th. Now that's being squared by the 4th house. So what is the 4th house? It's about roots. What example we saw in our parental relationship? What is the emotional foundation of our relationship? We also call the 4th house as the funeral, the end of things. So often actually the IC represents why a relationship is going to lead to divorce. And typically that comes from our parental, example, what we see.
Yeah.
When we look at the quadrants, basically the first 4 houses is always about self-development. The 5th till the 8th house is going to be more about self-development through others. And the 9 to the 12 is going to be how we interact with the society. Sorry, we are not looking at the quadrants. We are looking at the, we can call them as quadrants as well, but I didn't break them down in 4 bits. So, the 5th house is a Leo expression. The 7th house is a Libra expression. And the 8th house is a Scorpio expression. So the 5th house is going to be more something to do to have a crush on someone, the way we date, the way we flirt with others. It's a fire house, so it starts with loads of passion. And then when we look at the next sign, which is Virgo or the 6th house, that plays a role in that quadrant as well. That's about the fact that we work on a relationship. We put the work into the relationship. But also it's the ability to care for yourself as well as for others, or putting things in order in the relationship, which is going to be about assisting others in their needs as well. And here we need to learn to sacrifice of time for others also. So the 6th house for me, if I wanted to come up with an example, 5th house, we're going to date. With the 6th house, we're going to, kind of move together, and we're going to try that in modern world. 7th house, we're going to get married. And then the 8th house would be something to do with kind of like when the honeymoon season finished. And then we get into the real life, and then we have got all the challenges coming in the relationship and the crisis situations, and then we work a lot, or how much money we have, and so forth. Now that's how the relationship plays out, really.
And it will very much depend on how deep is the soul connection. And you always said the 8th house is the house of soulmates and soul connections.
That's right. And when we look at that, the 5th house is, we looked at the Virgo element, which was working on the relationship, and Libra is going to be about maintaining the relationship, a balance. Now, it's very interesting that Saturn is the exalted ruler of Libra, which is kind of like talking about the initial challenges of the relationships, but at the same time, what do we need to do? How to maintain the relationship to make it long? long lasting. And once we put a roof over our head, that's going to be loads of clashing energy, surely, because we have got different views on world. You know, Saturn is the planet of tests. So the tests in a relationship. But also when we go back to the 5th house, which is a Leo energy. Now let's just think about a lion for a second. It's about bravery. So how brave are we to initiate dating, for example? So when we're looking at relationship topics, you know, always look at the quadrants. So if I'm looking at, you know, to give you an example, let's say you are my client and you're telling me that you have got relationship problems. I'm going to ask questions, surely, because I want to know where the problems are coming from. Are they coming from the fact that you meet someone, or you have got trouble to meet people to get into relationship with? Because if you are telling me, oh, listen, I haven't had a relationship for 15 years, I'm not going to look at the 7th house, pointless, because it means that we are together with someone. I'm going to be looking at the 5th house, and I'm going to look at the 2nd. Because what happens is that obviously that's the fixed quadrant there. If I don't love myself, if I don't have confidence, obviously I'm not going to go and start dating with others, because I might feel like I'm ugly, or I've got small boobs, big penis, small penis, whatever, you know, stuff we come up with in our brain, but that is originated from the 2nd house.
The
So
self-worth
I'm going to
house.
start ruler and the 2nd house ruler. If I know that someone has got issues with dating, you know, or to get into relationship. So to give you an example, I can be honest about my problems in relationship department. I have kind of never had a long-term relationship, let's be frank about it. So there is no point in looking at my Mercury, which is the ruler of my 7th house. All I'm going to see is that Mercury in Capricorn is longing for a long-term relationship. The problem is going to be in the 2nd house or the 5th house. For instance, the 2nd house ruler in my chart is in the 1st. So body image issues can be one of the problems which is holding me back. So we're going to have to work on that, mentally, physically, whatever way it is. When I look at my 5th house ruler, which is in the 10th, most likely I compensate, you know, the love story with loads of work and so on, because that's 6 sign away from the 5th. So obviously it's about work. The 6 is related to work. So yeah, just one practical tip there. But when we look at, you know, the main love houses, which is 5th, 7th, and 8th, 2 of those are actually fixed houses, fixed energies. So often it indicates that something needs to be fixed to reach love. And it's always going to originate from the very first fixed sign, which is going to be the 2nd house, or Taurus. And Taurus is about self-love, self-worth, pleasure. It starts being built up between 18 months to 4-year-old period. Often that's where our love issues are originating from. To give you an example, that's when a baby actually discovers that they have got special parts. And often what a parent does is that once they see their little child kind of touching themselves, then they hit on their hands. Oh, don't do that. And then what happens is that obviously the child is going to feel that it's guilt, you know, it's bad thing to do. That could be one of the first thing we do, you know, or how we create some type of blockages in our love lives. So the 5th house is about being ready to date, to meet others, to receive love and admiration from others. And obviously that's exploring our sexual kind of desire. Now with that 8th house, we're going to be ready to share love with others. And it's not just going to be about, let's have a good old bang bang. It's going to be more about how to please others. you know, how to penetrate so that it doesn't hurt, how to trust my partner. And that's really, if we start thinking about, you know, what we say during marriage, I've never got married, so I would never be able to, you know, say it word by word, but till death apart,
Oh, yeah.
right? So, and the eighth house rules death. So it really talks about what happens in our relationship when the shit hits the fan, basically. And then we have got the last fourth fixed energy, which is the Aquarius. Now that's going to be about sharing love on a higher level, though. Leo is something to do with heart, or the fifth house is something to do with heart. So the following the heart desire, knowing who we are, knowing how we want to be loved, how we want to be accepted by others. And Aquarius gonna be about being the ability to put that personality into the crowd, because I'm proudly woman, I'm proudly 89 years old, or whatever, you know, the issue is, which, as I said, originates from the second house. So to summarize on the fifth house, you know, it's about creation, children. The child is actually the self-expression of yourself. You know, often what happens is that we raise our child the way we believe they should act. Those are our belief systems. And often it is a form of clash as well, because you have got an idea about how to raise a child. I've got an idea how to raise a child, and we might not be completely agree on that at all. So we want to form them the way we imagine, but also pleasure, sex, fun, the relationship while it is exciting. Often, you know, let's just think about the main relationship house, seventh. It's being sextile by the fifth, meaning that if we don't have fun in the relationship, imagine that the fifth house ruler squares your seventh house ruler. Naturally, we need to have fun in the relationship to maintain that Saturn Libra energy, right? So if we fifth house ruler squaring the seventh house ruler often indicates that the sex is not working or we don't have fun. So usually I give, you know, because my clients are coming up with, let's call them excuses, you know, why they don't have time to have fun, or because of the kids. As I usually ask them, do you have a best friend who have got a kid? Yeah. So why don't you organize a Tuesday when you look after their kids, Thursday they look after your kids, and then we can have a naked day. And then, you know, we have got a solution for the problem. Because
Naked
I
day.
understand we have got, you know, I mean, you know, that's just my opinion, but I think a relationship highly dependent on sex. You know, if it doesn't work, often a relationship is gonna fail. And of course, even your natal chart shows that, because fifth house sextile in the seventh, a sextile is a Venusian energy, which also talks about pleasure, but also talks about playfulness as well. So let's forget about sex. We need quality time together. We need to go out. We need to go to the theater and all those type of things. So the fifth house plays a very important role here.
Mm-hmm.
But also it is about the process of love. So obviously I'm going to go on a date. We're going to have the first kiss. We're going to have the first sleepover. Then we're going to have the first sexual intercourse. So the fifth house represents that. And often what happens when it is kind of attacked, the fifth house ruler, squared or opposed, maybe the process is not right. And, you know, maybe we wait 10 dates to have the first kiss, or maybe we do it immediately. God knows, but that could show that the process is somehow not right. Obviously, the word courtship, which I think kind of got lost in the dictionary in the 21st century, but that also belongs to the fifth house. You know, what type of courtship you expect, or what type of courtship you give to others. And also, you know, think about
And
when you
you
were a
have to do it
teenager.
throughout. you have to do it throughout the relationships, not just at the beginning. You need to do little surprises, little gifts, little, like you said, like I can be with my husband for days and days at home taking care of the kids, and we tell to each other we feel alienated because we haven't had some fun together. We haven't done something romantic for each other. It's not just about spending time physically present with each other in the same room and doing responsibilities together. It's actually very disconnecting, no matter how close you are. What is truly connecting is either this fifth house that I've noticed, having fun together, playing together, and the other side, romantic gestures, and crisis. That's the other thing that's very connecting. The eighth house, just like you talked, like this fixed house.
That's right. When I was holding my very first talk about this topic, how I started the class was I asked every single individual in the class to write me down what are the top 3 most important thing for them in a relationship. I just wanted to see, out of 25, 30 people, what they're going to say. And sex was one of them. And the other one was communication. And it's interesting because the 9th house always also sextile as the 7th, and the 3rd is trining the 7th. So the 9th house is the way how the partner talks to us, but also how we understand to the partner. So the 9th house is a house of opinions, but also the listening skills of what we have. Because with the 3rd house, we talk. With the 9th house, we listen. And if it's not working, again, then most likely 2 people are talking to each other and they don't hear what the other one says. And eventually it's going to lead to some potential problems. So the 5th house is the ways we fall in love with others. Oh, yeah. And then I was going to say that the 5th house is actually trining the 1st. So when we are young and then we fall in love the very first time, it's going to boost our confidence. And and obviously, if it wasn't reciprocated, then maybe the 5th house can show as well initial, because Leo house, it wants to achieve, it wants to be the king among others. So it's going to destroy the self-confidence. So often actually that the problem is. But also the 5th house can be karmic as well, because often when we fall in love, oh, it was meant to be. And then a couple of days later, we realize, oh, shit, it didn't work out the way I thought. Especially if we have got the outer planets in the 5th house, often relationship can feel very karmic, especially with Neptune, when we think that, oh, now we are, we found the one and that's going to last forever. Usually that's not the case with Neptune in the 5th, unfortunately. But Leo sign, so it's quite animalistic. So meaning that it's about self-recreation, it's about the sexual desire, the physical passion, but also your own relationship with the child within. And if we think about it again, the 3rd house is actually in sextile to the 5th. So the communication that helps to express the true self. So this is how these houses are very nicely connected. And then if we understand the process of this, our interpretation skills, I think, going to become a lot better. Now, the 7th house, everyone knows about the 7th house because everyone looks at that, primarily when it comes to relationship. But for me, often a question about the 7th house, oh, this is a legal relationship, so do we need to get married or not? I think once you move together with someone and then you share the same roof, that is going to be a 7th house matter. Obviously, that's not the way how it played out in ancient times. So, but, we are in a modern world. We're going to have to modernize. certain elements of astrology as well. So the 7th house is about when we share the day-to-day matters with each other, how we share responsibilities. Saturn would be that exalted ruler of Libra, so responsibilities. But of course, it does talk about contractual agreements. It's a Libra house, so how we balance each other out. But I also say that the 7th house is the unintegrated part of ourself, because a relationship is meant to be holding up a mirror for us, and how it kind of becomes, a round circle, how it becomes a circle. So the partner is the continuation of the self. That's why the 1st and the 7th house is called the relationship axis. But also, what boundaries do we agree on? Again, that Saturnian flavor there. Do we have any codependencies going on? Do we project something onto our partner? Planets in the 7th house often can show what we tend to be projecting on our partner. Or maybe how we want to shift. Let's say we've got Moon in the 7th house. How we want to shift the Moon responsibility onto the partner. So, let's say I'm a man, I've got Moon in the 7th house, and then I just want to get out of the parenting, and then I just give it to the partner all the time. Or I
Just
always
describe
blame
me.
the partner, or I always blame the partner that, oh, you don't show emotions, or your mom always interferes in our relationship, or whatever, something which we might project onto someone else. Also, I think because it's a house of agreement, so it also talks about the ability to take other people's point of view as well. Whether I'm going to be understanding towards the idea of the others or not so much. And, what happens here is that this is the descendant when the sun sets. So often, actually, it also shows what happens behind closed doors. Now, in traditional astrology, actually, the 8th house, yes, it's death, but also the 7th, because that's the sunset. That's the disappearance of the self. Now, if we think about that disappearance of the self from a psychological point of view, it means that you've given up your personality. You connect with someone on a deep level that it's not just you who matters anymore, but there is someone else in the picture as well. And taking responsibility for others. So that's really 7th house too. But this is a cardinal house. So there is loads of merging on a physical level, not just on an emotional level. And Saturn being the exalted ruler, again, talks about physicality. So this is a little bit more physical. The 8th house is going to be a little bit more on the emotional connection part. So that's where we make the deep connections. That's where we see the spiritual meaning of the relationship. Very interesting meaning to the 8th house. I remember I learned that from my very first teacher. And then obviously once he told us, then I started, testing that with people. He said that the 8th house is secretly what we people tend to go for in a partner. And the ruler is going to kind of show that to us. Now, why is that? Because he explained that not everyone is going for the good guys and good girls,
So
everyone loves a little bit of a mystery about the other, and no one is perfect. Everyone is going to have flaws. So the 8th house is going to show you why you are attracting those. It kind of makes sense because the 8th house is in conjunction to the 1st. Now, the in conjunction is basically when two planets are connecting the 6th sign together. So number 6 is about sickness, but also work. So the 8th house can show why a relationship fails, or what we need to work on in the relationship to make it long lasting also. But secretly, what we are drawn to in a partner. So that's an interesting theory, and I think it works brilliantly. And
Can
I
you
urge
give me
everyone
an
to kind of
example?
look at that.
Can you give me an example? I'm curious to see, to hear.
So, for example, let's have a look at my example. My 8th house ruler is Venus, and Venus is in the sign of Pisces. So obviously the sign is always gonna talk to us about the traits, and the house is the area of life. So what can be Venus in Pisces to be drawn to? Maybe the weak, someone we can save. Maybe it could be a person who is very giving, caring, romantic. Now, definitely I tend to attract the weak, and then it drives me nuts. I cannot go out with someone who does not have a purpose in life. And this is the reason why relationships fail in my life after 3-4 weeks. I always give them a chance. We'd start talking. I ask them, what's your job? Oh, I don't have a job. Okay, no problem. I'm sure they are looking for one. And then when 3-4 weeks later, they still don't have one, it starts driving me nuts.
But
Or
first,
my
first
ex,
it's
who I
secret.
was together.
So this eighth house is something that almost like subconsciously attracts you to someone that you
Oh,
can't.
yes, subconsciously. Absolutely. So you're not looking for that physically. The type of people you get because you have got issues with that, and you are meant to be solving that mystery in your own life, basically. And and then it's a life story of my life that I attract lazy people, and I hate it.
You
And
overcompensate.
you know why? Because my 5th ruler is in the 10th with Jupiter. So when I work, I overwork. And I think what happens here is that they are reminding me that work is not everything. Plus, I have got South Node in Capricorn as well. And North Node is in the 5th house. So I'm meant to be having fun, not just working all the time. And this is something I learned in 2021. So now I don't work 12, 16 hours anymore like I used to. I work 5-6 hours, but I do work every day though. So I still haven't managed to learn to give myself 2 days off. But I'm gonna get there hopefully this year, when I give myself 2 days off every single week, and then no excuse about that. So the 8th house, because it's a dark house. So the dark house means that it's, from a Ptolemaic aspect point of view, it's not visible towards the rising sign. So we've got the 6th, 8th, and the 12th house, which we call as blind houses or blind spot. Now, the blind spot can indicate something which we don't see in our partners, or we don't see the partner's intention. That's why there's a little bit of a danger with the 8th house, because we are truly drawn to a criminal, for example, but we don't see how bad it is, for example. 8th house is getting used to the partner's flows. Why? Because it's in conjunction to the 1st, and the in conjunction is annoyance, irritation. I've heard an astrologer say once that imagine the in conjunction as you are trying to sleep in a tent, and then a mosquito keeps running around your ears, and then you're trying to catch them and you can't, and you cannot sleep. And that's the type of in conjunction. It irritates, frustrates, annoys us. Also, the 8th house can show what wounds we will be dealing with in the relationship departments, what type of secrets you've got, or what type of secrets the partner has. Also, the 8th house is a water house. It's a karmic house. I tend to call it as a karmic house, as in the karma, which so imagine the karma as a straw system. And when you get married, basically you add a new straw into that system. So that's basically the gained karma we have through meeting people,
Mutual
through getting
karma.
married.
Mutual karma.
That's right.
Yeah. And what if someone
And
activates, oh, sorry. If someone activates
and then
heavily the
yeah.
eighth house,
Say again, sorry?
someone activates heavily your eighth house with their planets, or you activate someone's eighth house with planets.
It could be a karma breaking, for example, that either they're gonna make it worse or better. But let's say imagine where, I don't know, you come from a very poor family, and then your partner's planetary energies are activated in your eighth house. So it could indicate that they want to break you out of that mindset of being poor. Now, whether it is by giving money or prompting you to start something, or, you know, whatever the planet is that's going to kind of signify to you in what ways they want to break you out of that karmic trap, because it's a blind spot. So often it's a trap. It's often representing unresolved issues from actually past relationships, which we tend to repeat. The repetition comes from the fact that it's fixed energy, so it's stubborn. So it got stuck within us. But also, the eighth house is a water house. It's a muted house, which means quiet. So understanding the partner without anything being said, the ability of that. Yes, it's a difficult house, so it does indicate the storms in the relationship. I usually say if we have got planets in the eighth house, we actually are meant to be sharing that planet with others rather than keeping it for yourself. So imagine that you have got Venus there, and then you always keep the money in your pocket and you don't give it to others. Eventually, life is going to take it away from you. So that must be shared, you know, simple as that. And you know, interesting also because we call the eighth house as inheritance. Now it's trining the fourth, so it also shows what we have inherited from our parents too, and how we take that into the relationship. So relationship is a very complicated topic, and ideally speaking, it's not just the seventh house what we need to be looking at. This is basically kind of like the final thoughts of this short presentation, but it's good to look at basically anything from the 4th till the 9th, because those are going to be the relationship kind of psychological development of those.
Can I ask you a last question? What about the
Sure.
11th house? Anything in the 11th house, because it's trining the 7th. How will it help the relationship, and what does it mean for the relationship if you're strongly 11th house person?
Very good question. The 11th, two things. The 11th is fifth from the 7th. So often it describes the sexual desire of our partner. So what happens there is a strong planet, a strong 11th house can indicate that we're always going to attract sexually very active people. Secondly, the 11th house is the lovers of our partner. So when we are getting cheated on, often the 11th house gets activated. Because that's from the 5th from the 7th. In horary astrology, if there is a question about is Johnny cheating on me, we're going to have to look at whether the 7th house has got an interest towards the 11th house by rulership, exaltation, or even triplicity. If they have, most likely they do, or at least they are shedding an eye on someone else. If there is an aspect as well, separating or applying, then they have done it or they are going to do it. Thirdly, the 11th house is also an air house. So imagine a relationship where you are always sitting at home and you never socialize and you have no friends coming around. So how the society impacts your relationship, but also how much socialization you or your partner needs to keep this relationship going. And obviously it connects to the 5th house as well, because the 5th house is party. Now, with the 11th house, you don't party yourself. You're going to have to meet other people. And I think in a relationship, it's extremely important that, you know, eventually you're going to introduce your husband to your girlfriends and boyfriends, and, you know, we're going to mingle and hang around, hang out together. Basically, we can call it as the new impulses given by different people to the relationship.
Wow. And I've noticed a partner will show different qualities to yourself and reveal themselves in a different light to you when surrounded by others, because other people trigger different sides of you. So you can start seeing your partner from new eyes when there's around. Viktor, I want to thank you so much, because every sentence you say, it's like I'm learning something from it. I love the incredible.
One final thing I want to mention, because the primary house is still the 7th. And, you know, the major reasons why relationships don't work out is inner dysfunctionality, or putting so much effort into work and forgetting about having a partner and having fun and so forth, or our self-limitations. Now, when we look at it from that point of view, the 10th house is squaring the 7th. So the visibility or the social status is a challenge. The 4th house, which is your inner foundation, is a challenge to the relationship, or the 1st house, which is opposing, and that's you, yourself. You know, it might sound that we are always looking for the problem within us, but unfortunately we must have, because I usually say when we get cheated on, you know, it needed 2 people anyway. We kind of force the partner into that situation by not giving something to that partner. Obviously, you don't receive something back in return either. So it's kind of like a mutual reception, really. But yeah, it's always good to look into the mirror. And that's why the 7th house is the mirror. The partner shows us a mirror so that we learn more about ourselves.
Thank you so much. So enlightening again. I love talking to you and learning so many new things. Sorry, I'm working from home with the kids. But if anyone would like to take courses with Viktor, he's starting 2 courses, one in January, one in February. Even if you're late, you'd receive access to the lectures. I'll put 2 links below, and they're about everything about the houses. And Viktor demonstrated beautifully his depth of knowledge and insights that are so different than what is general astrology in regards to houses. And the second one is all about planets in signs, everything about planets in different signs. Sorry about that. Again, the noise around. Thank you so much, Viktor. Happy Valentine's Day in advance to everyone. We're coming up to that time. And hoping that to see you again. And I heard that you're doing a retreat soon in Turkey. Hopefully we'll hear more about
I
that.
will do one, and it's going to be about relationship, actually. 5 days relationship and 1 day fully on family constellation therapy, where we're going to clear these bloody relationship blockages.
Thank you so much, Viktor. I can't wait to hear about that. And the 2 courses, if you can't see Viktor live, take courses with him, because he's the Renaissance, the closest I know to a Renaissance man with so much knowledge. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone. See you soon. Bye-bye.